I am Surbhi Kesar, a lecturer in the Department of Economics at SOAS and a co-organizer of the conference with LK Pagmer and the organizing team both at SOAS and AHE, especially including Ingrid Kvangraven, Waeyenberge, Daniela Guizot, and from AHE, and Yanis Dafarmos, Sara Stevanos, Stephanie Mena, Teresa Reyes, Chani Dwarka Singh, Tobias Franz from SOAS, and a fantastic group of student volunteers, including Lena Gemke, Chris Neufer, Leon Scarce, Diego Antonio Merla Lopez, Charles Stevenson, Tom Youngman, Buthena Almadi, Christiana Hesse, Shula Mulenga Secano, Taylor Rockhill, Charles Stevenson, and Lucille Franchett. If I have left off someone's name, I'm really sorry, but we'll come back to the volunteers and the organization team towards the end as well. On behalf of the AHE, we are particularly grateful to SOAS, especially the co-heads of the Department of Economics, Elisa Waeyenberge and Hannah Bargawi, and the administration support provided to us by Matt Scofield for extending all possible support for this conference. And to the Young Scholars Initiative of the Institute for New Economic Thinking for supporting part of this conference. Before we begin with some opening remarks from Elisa and Hannah on behalf of SOAS and Ingrid Kvangraven on behalf of AHE, I would just like to pose a few questions and share a few thoughts that we can hopefully reflect upon and engage with, even if not answer during the conference. First off, we are in the time of a global economic and political crisis, which has increasingly become the normal state of affairs, and I think which we've increasingly normalized. For any social scientist, I suppose, these times have very much unsettled us because we have enough global wealth, but the welfare of the global population still remains elusive. Labor is in extremely precarious conditions, which is obvious from various labor pricings throughout the world. With little scope for their upward mobility, we are already exposed to the impact of disturbing the balance of economic interaction with the nature. The impacts of all of these are in turn shaped by various forms of identity-based inequality, including race, caste, gender, sexuality, core periphery differences, and many others. So crisis everywhere, not a crisis with a resolution. What then is the role of a heterodox economist? If defined broadly, it's a science where we are critical of the doxa. But then how is this doxa associated with systemic power? And then how does it aid in the reproduction and persistence of this crisis-ridden system? Does heterodoxy offer better theoretical apparatus that can lend themselves to reveal the systemic forms of oppression and the resultant crisis that capitalism fosters? And is the role of heterodox economics in this context just intellectual, or is it both intellectual and political? One, to engage with these issues critically, and second, to call truth to power. In line with some of the thoughts, the conference, specifically by focusing on the theme of crisis in capitalism or crisis of capitalism, aims to provide a space to engage with some of these critical issues and provide some rigorous ways to make sense of the economic system that we are a part of, what we've come to recognize as global capitalism. Think of the various processes and contradictions that encompass it, identify the fault lines and fractures and the possibilities of change. However, while engaging with all of these issues, the conference also seeks to centrally place the issue of intersectional identity and mutually co-constitutive identities that I already outlined earlier, that fundamentally shape while are also in turn shaped by all of these issues. And all of these are themes that the SOAS Department of Economics has been very critically engaging with. And of course, generally the broader heterodoxy as well. To centrally locate some of these themes, which will be providing a scaffolding for the conference, there will be a keynote address and plenary roundtable discussions on these themes. The keynote address for the conference will be delivered by Professor Prabhat Patnaik, who will be speaking on the key themes of crisis in capitalism or crisis of capitalism. Other than that, we have 3 plenary roundtables on 3 specific themes of the conference that have come to strongly characterize the crisis situation that we're in. Labor and precarity, we'll have a discussion with Dipankar Basu and Tanya Lee, issue of identity and exclusion in economics with Naila Kabir, Jens Lurch, and Koja Koram, and the issue of climate change with Anitra Nelson and Asad Rahman. We're very excited to welcome our plenary speaker. Apart from this, there are several parallel sessions on the theme of the conference, as well as other themes in heterodox economics. The session includes roundtable discussions, paper presentations, and workshops, including the SOAS PhD poster sessions, which I definitely recommend people go and see, workshops on various critical methods that one can employ. And you can find the session and the nature of the session in the program that's available to you, and the full program is available on the website. We also have a special student-led session for lessons for critique, hosted by Chris Nefer and Lena Gemke, which will be drawing upon feminist economics, degrowth approaches, and decolonial perspectives to discuss how to shake up the economic ivory towers and monolithic curricula. Very flashy description, Chris and Lena. The entire conference is hybrid in nature, where some of the speakers will be joining us online while the majority is in person. So thanks a lot for joining. We're very excited about this. I know of several people who couldn't get visa in time, and I can see them online in the conference right now. But so are the cons of living in a world with national borders and discriminatory practices against the countries from the global south. The conference dinner is on July 7, where you all are invited. There will be lunch and coffee provided on all days of the conference on the lower atrium of the building. And Zoom link is being coordinated by Daniele Guizo with Sofia, Quelnez, and Devika Dutt, all a part of the AHE organization committee. Since we're still in the middle of the pandemic, it'll be good if people are sitting in clusters to wear masks, have as much ventilation as possible. Their masks at the registration desk, as well as their sanitizers in rooms and in various places in the building. So let's have some critical engagement over the next few days that can further the idea of radical and decolonized intellectual engagement in politics. On that note, I would like to request the co-heads of the economics department at SOAS, Dr. Elisa Waeyenberge and Dr. Hannah Bargawi, to present their opening remarks, following which may I request Dr. Ingrid Kvangraven to speak to us about the AHE in the capacity of a coordinator with Alexander Aston. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Surbhi. So I'm Elisa Waeyenberge, and I'm the co-head of the economics department here at SOAS, and it's my great pleasure to have been sharing this role with my colleague Hannah, to whom I will hand over in a second. So as Surbhi already highlighted, crises is the kind of big theme, not just of this conference, but of the particular era that we find ourselves in today in contemporary capitalism. We've had, by now we can say perhaps 15 years of intersecting, overlapping, escalating crises. So global financial crisis, austerity, economic crisis, pandemic, against the backdrop of decades of neoliberal restructuring that had dismantled our capacity to provide health, social care, etc. All this against the backdrop of a rapidly unfolding ecological collapse. So we have this massive, urgent kind of crisis staring us in the face. At the same time, we are part of a discipline, mainstream economics, that's incapable of leading us to understand what are the core issues in terms of what are the main flaws within contemporary capitalism. The discipline is not materially anchored, it is not historically grounded, it doesn't have the tools to engage with the systemic or the structural, and yet we find ourselves with these massive challenges facing humanity. And I think it's against the backdrop of those two very stark, if you want, contradictions. One, we have these massive crises. Second, we have a discipline that's unable to lead us, to guide us in trying to unpack some kind of core features of it, that I've been particularly delighted when I looked at the program of this, the conference, this edition of the annual conference of the Association of Heterodox Economists, to see such a strong critical mass that is growing within heterodox economics. So this gives me lots of hope, and it gives me a lot of delight. So I think the conference is going to be an important forum for us to discuss about what are those core issues that are posing these, that underpin, if you want, those massive challenges. I think it's also an important locus where we can celebrate multiple methods as we try to examine key questions with regard to contemporary capitalism, put these in conversation with each other and try to move forward to identifying solutions in terms of where do we take it from there. And again, I think that's important that the conference provides a space for us to do so as a community of heterodox economists, because I think quite a few of us tend to be isolated in particular institutions, and this particular conference then provides that unique annual opportunity to come together as a community to think strategically, how do we move forward our agenda, how do we strengthen the importance of heterodox economics within the discipline. So that's great. Now, when I looked at the program, I was not just delighted that the AHE conference is going from strength to strength, there's strong critical mass that's building, etc. But I was particularly struck that there was an attempt to move away from what perhaps may have been a strong Euro or North American focus traditionally within heterodox economics. And I saw that there was not just in participants, but also in themes, a stronger integration, if you want, of the concerns that are facing our colleagues and our the humanity in the global south. And I hope that as we go forward as heterodox economists, we will be able to put center stage the way in which we try to understand the multiple overlapping crises of contemporary capitalism, as in the way in which they confront people in the global south. And I think that in that context, it's quite apt that this edition of the conference finds itself being hosted at SOAS, because the SOAS Economics Department has traditionally combined a celebration of multiple views within heterodox economics with an attempt to look at particular problems of contemporary capitalism from a global south perspective. So I think to see this particular edition of the annual conference of heterodox economics do both those, emphasize both those ambitions, strengthen heterodox economics, but at the same time, moving towards putting the global south perspective at the center of how we understand the interdependency of the various crises that we face, I think is quite wonderful. And with that, I will hand over to Hannah, who will say a few more things about the department.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Surbhi. And thanks for inviting us to say some opening remarks. So I'm Hannah Bargawi, together with Elisa. We're joint heads of the economics department here. And I'm just going to take 2 minutes of your time to give you a sense of SOAS economics and a little bit of its history and where we're headed in terms of your part of SOAS as you come here for the conference, and you're very much represented here are members of the SOAS Economics Department. So as Elisa has mentioned, we are very much concerned with the global issues, and we look at them through that kind of heterodox lens. SOAS has had economics here for around 67 years now. So in 2019, we celebrated 65 years of economics at SOAS in various different incarnations, not necessarily as a department in its own right. And economics at SOAS has a very rich history in political economy, in development economics, as it was sort of traditionally emerging, but also in policy. And I think one interesting theme of this conference is also about transformative solutions. And I think that's probably one area that we, as much as we hold on to the political economy and the development economics in terms of our traditions, we're also very much concerned with thinking about transformative solutions within the department here at SOAS. So actually, one of the things we sort of rebranded ourselves when we thought about what are we as a department when we celebrated 65 years was to think of ourselves as an economics for and of the future. And that means that we're really concerned with some of the themes that are being picked up in this conference as well. And many of the people in this room and contributing from the department are going to speak to those themes. So whether that's around intersecting inequalities, around the climate emergency, as well as a host of other themes in the department. I think one thing that's important to us is building those progressive alliances. And we've done that, as Elisa has mentioned, perhaps within the department, not just in the global north, but also in the global south. So whether that's working with UN agencies, with governments, that's something that's a very important theme of the Department of Economics. And it's great to see that that's going to, hopefully, some of those things will emerge out of this conference, to think about what those transformative solutions can be. The last thing I was going to say is around the kind of the growth of the department in recent years, and it's kind of reflected in Surbhi's opening remarks in terms of who she's thanking, and particularly our PhD community. So here at SOAS, the economics department, we have a big undergraduate program, a master's program, as well as a fantastic PhD research program. And many of our PhD researchers are here, and you'll see them across the days helping out, and the list of names that Surbhi gave gives you a sense of who they are. But also since 2019, despite the pandemic, the department has grown and refreshed, and we have a number of new colleagues, of which Surbhi is one, but also some fantastic alliances with other colleagues across other institutions, and many of them are here. So it's really a massive thank you to bringing the conference to SOAS and to us, to AHE and to Elke and to Surbhi for organising. And I know I'm handing over to Ingrid, who I think will say a few more words about AHE. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Ingrid, and I'm from the AHE. And I just want to say a little bit about the association, where we've come from, what we do, and sort of this particular moment of the association, and where the conference fits in that regard. So as Surbhi mentioned, this is the 24th conference. So if you do a little bit of math, the first conference was in 1998. And this was a fringe conference, actually, it was called. Fred Lee was one of the organizers, who is one of the founders of the association, and it was a fringe conference to the Royal Economic Society annual conference. So that's how the association started, creating some kind of opposition to the mainstream, right? This is the main association that the mainstream economists have. Some of you might go to this conference, I don't know. But that's how the association started. Okay, people are laughing, no one goes to it. Okay, this is the most relevant economics conference in the country. Okay, so that's how it started. And the first couple of years, that was the way that the conference was organized. Since then, we have moved away from that model. As you can see, the conference is not a fringe conference to the mainstream. It is its own positive project. We discuss debates within heterodox theory. We try to push heterodox theory forward. We connect it to social movements, to activism, to think about how to challenge these, to better understand and how to challenge these crises that Surbhi and Elisa were talking about. This is a moment of crises, and heterodox thinking is more important than ever. I think, so the legacy of Fred Lee, just to say a little bit of that, is to bring the heterodox community together to try to foster thinking that can help us understand crises, but also to support early career scholars and to build a community. So that's something, like a legacy that we take seriously. The Fred Lee family has provided some funding for us to give out a Fred Lee Prize, which we'll do at the dinner tomorrow night, for the best early career paper. So the AHE fits in here. It supports heterodox thinking among students, among academics, and policymakers. And we're incredibly happy to have partnered with the SOAS Economics Department for this conference in particular. I think there's no better place to nurture heterodox scholarship and activism. So thank you for all of your support. Since I joined AHE in 2018, 4 years ago, the association has grown a lot. It has diversified a lot. According to the most recent numbers, I saw that there were around 300 members now. So this is a process that has been going on for a few years, but also in part because of this conference. It's attracting a lot of people from across the world. Our membership has become more diverse and has grown. The MC, the management committee, has also become more diverse and has grown. We've launched a range of new activities in the past few years, extending the association to new areas. The pandemic was a part of that, which allowed us to, well, we went online like most associations did. And that allowed us to reach all corners of the world and engage more scholars from the global south as well, which I think the association didn't do to a very large extent before the pandemic. So we've really expanded in terms of including more Global South-centric scholarship and also Global South scholars in the association. But that's a process that we're continuing to work on. And at this conference, it's also an important element in. And I know, well, actually, I can't see who's online, but maybe there are some of you online that are, calling in from across the world. We also have a postgraduate workshop that we do every year. And because of the pandemic, that one has also been online the past few years, which has also allowed us to not just provide support for PhD students in the UK, but also to postgraduate scholars, PhD scholars across the world. So that's something some of you might want to look up. It's free, but let's see if it's going to be online next year. But regardless, if it's not online, it'll be in Leeds. We also have a webinar series that we've launched that includes scholars from across the world. It's available to anyone, it's free. And there's also a student webinar associated with that. So student groups can also get involved and collaborate with us on that. So we've also diversified a bit in terms of generational, in the generational sense as well. Yeah, with this current conference, we're expanding even more, and we have a lot of new projects in the pipeline that I think we'll also talk about at the AGM, the annual general meeting, which is later today, and we'll hope you'll join us there. There are ways to get involved in the association, not just through like running for management committee, but there are also working groups and ways you can get involved in the webinars, for example, or helping out with the next conference. Yeah. So finally, I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this process and being part of this thinking and community building. And Surbhi already thanked a lot of people, so I won't go through all the people that need to be thanked, but I really want to thank Surbhi and Elke for the leadership on this conference. It's been incredible. It's been a pleasure to work with you. There are a lot of people that have really contributed to the conference, but it would have been impossible without your very, very good leadership. So thank you for that. Looking forward to chatting with all of you for the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, Elisa, and Hannah. So on that note, the conference is now open and we have a set of sessions. You have the program scheduled. There'll be one session with Elke on the issue of climate change in this room, and then there'll be few sessions down on this corridor itself in S113, 116, and 118. You can see which one you wish to attend. And other than that, for everybody who's on Zoom, you can use the same link to join the entire conference, and whichever session you want to attend, you can join that session. Daniele Guizo is on the Zoom to help if there is any query. So thanks a lot, and looking forward to the engagement over the next 3 days. Thanks a lot.